Today on Alex and Autos, we're out here with a 2015 Lexus LX 570 and a Bronco Classic Ride 50 child seat, which means it's now time for our weekly child seat video. Now the LX 570 is Lexus's largest SUV. It's also a traditional body-on-frame SUV. And what body-on-frame means to you is that we have a body right up here, and that's where you're sitting in the vehicle. That's where passengers go, it's where the driver goes. Then right down here we have a frame, and that's below the body, separate from the body. Now the frame in the LX is where the suspension, the wheels, and the engine connect to the vehicle, and that sits between the body and the road. That means that we don't have quite as much space efficiency going on the inside versus a unibody vehicle like Lexus's RX crossover. Now on the flip side, that means that the LX is a very rugged off-road vehicle, and it also has excellent towing characteristics because the engine is directly connected to the frame. Now in terms of competition, the LX 570 clearly competes with something along the lines of a Range Rover, but it also competes with something like a Cadillac Escalade, as well as a Mercedes-Benz GL and an Infiniti QX80. Now because the LX is a very traditional SUV with a big V8 engine, towing and off-roading in mind, this is not going to be as space efficient on the inside as some of those larger three-row crossovers out there, something along the lines of Infiniti's QX60. Now I'm in the front seat, I'm 6 feet tall, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust this seat so it's comfortable, but my legs are only about an inch away from the dashboard. Then we'll hop in the back and see how well child seats fit. Now moving to the back seat, you can see that we can easily accommodate a rearward-facing child seat right back here in the second row. Now our model does have the optional rear seat entertainment system right here, and that does mean there's a little bit less clearance between the front seat and this rearward-facing child seat back here. If you didn't get this, then you'd have a little bit of extra room. Now the LX 570 does have a power sliding forward and backward second row, and this particular seat is moved to its rearmost position. Now even though we do have this power sliding second row, getting into the third row is a very traditional affair. We lift this knob right there, and this seat lifts up from the rear and folds forward. That means you can't get into the rear if you do have a child seat installed right there, but it does mean that getting into the rear is quite easy. Now once I'm in the back, I do have a reasonable amount of room as far as passenger room goes. I can actually slide all the way over here to the left side of the vehicle, and I have about 1.5 inches of leg room over here. Now my legs are quite far up in the air because the seat bottom cushion is very low to the ground. Now I was able to fit 3 child seats across this third row. However, there are no latch anchors and no top tether anchors in the third row in the LX 570. There are only top tether anchors in the second row and only latch anchors for the outboard positions in the second row. Well, we're talking about latch anchors. The latch anchors on the second row for the middle seat position are right back here at the bottom of the second row seats. That's very close to the ground for the center position, but fortunately it's actually mid position right here in the back for the outboard seating position. That does make it a lot easier to put those in if you're sitting in the second row and you just reach behind the seat to try and engage that top tether anchor. The LX is a very wide vehicle, and as such I was able to fit 2 child seats over here. I can very easily sit comfortably in this outboard seat right here without this child seat interfering with my right arm. Now as with the third row, headroom back here is very generous. I have about 3 inches of headroom back here, and the most important thing of all is that the center child seat is actually in the center of this bench. It's not really skewed to one side or the other. Now even though the LX is a large SUV and the center child seat is in the center section, I wasn't able to fold this 40 portion of the seat with the center child seat installed right here. There's just not quite enough room. If you do need to be able to have 2 child seats and still access the back of your SUV, then you may need to consider narrower child seats than the Bronco Classic Ride 50. Now, as you'd logically expect with a vehicle this size, I had no problem installing 3 child seats across the second row. In fact, there's a generous amount of room even between these child seats, let alone between the child seats and the doors themselves. Now the distance between the child seat and the door is very important because in the event of a side impact accident, the curtain airbags will deploy right down here between the child seat and the door. You don't want them to actually deploy into the child seat. You do want them to deploy between the child seat and the door for maximum protection. Now let's see how well those child seats fit in the back here. I'm going to go ahead and flip up this third row right here into position, then we'll see how well they fit right back here in the single section. Now, as you can see, the generous dimensions of the LX 570 mean that we can very easily put child seats right back there. We also have enough room right back here behind this other seat to put a number of roller bags. You could probably put 2 24-inch roller bags, stacking them up right there behind that seat. Now, if you want to know more about the 2015 LX 570 and how it stacks up in terms of driving to the competition, go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen. You'll be taken on over to my channel page, where you can also see that video that just came out this week. You can also find me over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos, over at Twitter as Alex and Autos, and you can always email your questions to alex@alexandautos.com. I'll see you next week.